So one of the most common things that people will come to me when I talk about pelvic floor or engaging their abdominal muscles or those deep supportive muscles around their spine is they're like, I don't know whether I'm doing it properly. And that's pretty normal because it's a group of muscles that if they're working well, and you shouldn't really know that they're necessarily working, they're just doing their roles and supporting everything. There's no pain, there's no continence issues and those kinds of things. So if it's working well, then things are fine. But as I said, during pregnancy and after giving birth, this area's been under more stress and it's had an injury, if you like. So it is really important and can often feel different to get those muscles going. So it's important that we do know that we're doing it correctly. Now, one of the best things that you can do, whether it's in pregnancy or after you've had your baby, for your pelvic floor and your abdominal muscles and those deep supportive muscles that support your spine, is to think about your posture. Because if we've got good posture, the place that we're starting from to move is going to put those muscles in the best position and encourage them to work as they should work. So what should happen when we're even thinking about moving is that those deep supportive muscles will come on, they'll grade how much they need to come on depending on what we're going to do in preparation for movement and then provide that supporting role through movement. So it's really important that when we're starting to engage these muscles and with our posture that we're not being rigid or stiff and just kind of hanging on with everything. It's about a very graded and controlled and a nice fluent sort of way that the muscles are working together. So when I'm talking about good posture, if we're thinking about sitting, it's important that your feet are on the floor. We're nice and even in our base. And a good starting point for your sitting posture that sort of controls everything else is what's happening in your pelvis. So I always like to talk about sitting on the triangle of your pelvis. Pubic bones at the front, tailbones at the back, and sitting on all three. Once we sit on all 3 points and we have even weight distribution between them all, what you'll notice is the rest of your spine starts to grow longer because everything in the chain sort of falls into alignment. Whereas if we sit more on our bottom bones, what happens is we start to bend more through the trunk and have to push our neck out a little bit. So if we can get our pelvis into that position, we don't want to be too far forward, just in that nice, evenly positioned on those 3 points, it usually helps to get that nice long posture. Now, I always like to think about posture. When you were little at school and people said, sit up straight, everyone pulled themselves back really hard. And that's not what we're after, because remember, posture isn't rigid. It shouldn't be firm and it shouldn't be stuck. We don't want to pull back. We want to go long. We want to create a sense of length in our body. So I often talk about a magnet being from the top of your head to the roof and those 2 points on the magnet trying to pull together. So think long to open up through your spine and open up through the rib cage. And you'll find that if you're in those positions, it helps encourage the right action for your pelvic floor. If we go into standing, am I allowed to go into standing? And our standing posture, again, trying to have our weight nice and even between both legs. We don't want to be locked back in with our legs. We want our feet to be comfortable on the surface that we're on. And again, we want to be nice and long. Now, for women, we've often been taught throughout our whole life that we want a flat tummy. We don't want our bottom to poke out. So people get in the habit of often pulling that tailbone under and sucking their belly in. Particularly after you've given birth, and people often feel quite self-conscious and it feels quite strange around your belly when it's a little bit looser and floppier and it's a bit like that jelly belly. So people will often do this sort of action to just bring that in and flatten it out. The problem with doing that sort of action is that we change where our normal postural alignment is. We shorten up our pelvic floor, which makes it hard for it to work, and we teach the wrong pattern of activation that we want through these muscles of our spine and pelvic floor together. Okay, so when we're standing, again, we're aiming for long. If we think about our pelvis like a bucket, we don't want our bucket to be tipped forward too far, where water's going to come out the bucket. We don't want it to be tucked under the other way, where water will tip out the back. We want that bucket to sit in a nice steady position so the water stays in the bucket. Okay, so we can think about just making sure we're not too far one way or the other, and then going long. We don't want to pull the shoulders back. Just want to be nice and comfortable and long. And similarly with our head and shoulders, again, just falling into that nice long pattern. So if you can think about that throughout your day and being mindful of what your posture is doing during particular activities, if we're slumping and those sort of things, it's hard for those supportive muscles to work at their best. So think about your alignment first, and then it will make it easier to get the next step.